I have prepared a talk, and here it is. So first of all, I want to express gratitude to Upaya and to Roshi Joan for creating and maintaining this extraordinary temple and wide Sangha without boundaries, and wish that this work continues indefinitely, endlessly. Second is about the eclipse. So this Saturday, there is a total annular solar eclipse. And we are lucky to be in the path of the eclipse here in Santa Fe. And I, for one, am very excited. You can tell by looking at me. For your information, an annular eclipse, an annular solar eclipse, occurs when the new moon is in apogee and crosses in front of the exact path of the sun. Apogee means when the moon in its elliptical orbit is the furthest from the Earth, which occurs twice each month. Since the moon is farther away, it appears smaller and doesn't cover up the entire sun. It leaves a ring of fire, and it's very rare. I hope that everyone in this room has a chance to view the eclipse. I have lots of eclipse glasses. A word about Dharma talks. My talk today is on the Sandokai, that is inspired by the Sandokai. And reading my talk over this afternoon, I think it's a bit dense. So I thought I would say something about how to listen to a Dharma talk. We listen through our practice, present in our bodies, breathing in and breathing out. We breathe in the earth's atmosphere, refreshed and enlivened. We breathe out, falling into earth by the force of the earth's gravity, letting go of everything. Breathing in, we allow breath to lift our body from the inside out. Breathing out, we let go of tension in our neck, our shoulders, our back, allowing it to fall away like falling leaves in autumn. We hear the sounds of birds, machinery, planes, wind, and this allow taking in that which enters your ears and mind, and allow letting go that which does not enter your ears and mind. You don't need to take notes. The talk will be on the Upaya website if you want to revisit any part of this talk or all of this talk and any other talks given at Upaya. This is a tremendous gift that Upaya gives freely. We will have seminar tomorrow, allowing us to further discuss and clarify these matters that we're talking about this fall practice period. Today, for my talk, I used the following sources. Chinese Zen's Heritage by Andy Ferguson, Living by Vow by Shohaku Okumura, Inside the Grass Hut by Ben Connolly, and Branching Streams Flow in the Darkness, Zen Talks on the Sandokai by Suzuki Roshi. Suzuki Roshi gave these talks on the Sandokai at Tassajara in the summer of 1970. This was a year and a half before his death. And at this time, he was very ill. Yet, according to the introduction written by his attendant at that time, my teacher, Mel Weitzman, he worked hard in the intense summer heat, building stone walls with students. The Sandokai is variously translated as harmony of difference and sameness, the merging of difference and unity, and Hirirupaya as the identity of relative and absolute. Shito Shiqian is credited with writing the Sandokai. His years were 700 to 790, during the time when Zen, Chan, developed and flourished in Tang Dynasty China. Shito is our eighth ancestor, our eighth Zen ancestor, the first being Bodhidharma, the sixth being Huineng of the Platform Sutra. Now I'm going to leap back about 600 or 700 years, just for a few minutes, to briefly talk about the Madhyamakas. The Madhyamakas, an early school of Buddhism founded by Nagarjuna, is considered one of the backbones of Zen Buddhism, another being Yogacara. The Madhyamakas presented a rather thorny logistical case for such teachings as no self, which we now know of as middle way. The middle way does not mean a compromise between two extremes, like form and emptiness. It means the energetic dynamic of life itself. Katagiri Roshi, founder of the Minnesota Zen Center, called it total dynamic working. Total dynamic working. Never static, never fixed, open and always in process. This middle way is expressed in our tradition as not knowing. A statement made by Shito and subsequent teachers, for example, in the koan, not knowing is nearest. Suzuki Roshi expressed the middle way as beginner's mind. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. I think the Sandokai, as I said, translated as the harmony of difference and sameness, the merging of difference and unity, the identity of relative and absolute. There are many translations of the Sandokai. I think this is Shito's statement of the middle way. Let me give you some background on Shito. So Shito was born in 700. Huineng, the sixth patriarch, or we're calling him, patriarch, that's retro, isn't it? The sixth ancestor died in 713. And Shito met and worked some with Huineng. In fact, he was at Huineng's deathbed. So he was a Huineng student, but since Huineng died before he received any, he was probably ordained, but he certainly didn't receive Dharma transmission at age 13. His teacher became Huineng's heir, one of Huineng's heirs, Xingse. Well, that's a lot of words, isn't it? So I'll help you out. So Here's a couple of conversations that I think are really interesting and I want to share with you. So here's one. So this is Xingse asking Huineng. So Shurto is not yet in the picture. Xingse asked Huineng, in all that I do, how can I avoid falling into stages of spiritual development? Not a great question. In all that I do, how can I avoid falling into stages of spiritual development? Huineng said, how do you practice? Xingse said, I don't even practice the Four Noble Truths. Huineng said, what stages have you fallen into? Xingse said, without even studying the Four Noble Truths, what stages could I have fallen into? Huineng approved. We can notice in this conversation that Xingse is not saying he doesn't know and doesn't need to know anything about the Four Noble Truths in order to practice. He would have studied the Four Noble Truths and other basic Buddhist teachings deeply for years. I think he's saying, in this energetic, dynamic moment of life here with you, there are no stages of spiritual practice. We have an expression in our lineage, warm hand to warm hand. It's the title of my talk today. It's the title of Suzuki Roshi's second talk in his book, the Branching Streams Flow in the Darkness book. Warm hand to warm hand refers to those moments we meet fully and directly, whether a person, a flower, a soup pot in soapy water. There's no separation, no language to describe it. We're merged, submerged in the moment, fully and tenderly. Yet, we are not confused about what is the pot of soapy water and what is me. This is warm hand to warm hand practice. Two hands meeting as two hands, not disappearing into one blob. Here's another little conversation. So this is, now we're going to hop forward. This is Xingse and Shurto. So this would have been after Huineng's death, and Shurto is practicing with Xingse. Xingse says, someone says there's news from Lingnan. So Lingnan means south of the mountain, and it would refer to Huineng. So he's saying there's news from either the temple of Huineng or something like that. So he says, someone says there's news from Lingnan. Shurto says, someone doesn't say there's news from Lingnan. Xingse then said, if that's so, then from where did the sutras and shastras come forth? Shastras means, sutras are the words of the Buddha. Shastras are all the commentary and other literature around them. Shurto said, they came from this. Xingse approved. We take a look at this conversation with relative and absolute in mind. Xingse's statement seems to come from the relative. It's about some other place, some other person not present, and it assumes a passage of time. So Shurto meets the relative with a statement coming from the absolute. Someone doesn't say there's news coming from Lingnan. He negates the statement. Then Xingsa stands by his statement of the relative by saying, our whole lineage and all the teachings are of the relative. The relative cannot be dismissed. It cannot be disrespected. What do you say to this? Shurto says, they all came from the merging of relative and absolute. Just this energetic, dynamic moment of life as we are, you and me, here, right now. Again, Shurto is coming back to warm hand to warm hand. All these sutras and shastras are teachings and records of just this. You and me, warm hand to warm hand. So what is this warm hand? One of them picks up some water. Warm hand is a living hand, a living person. Our lineage resides in living beings and is conveyed being to being to being. And in this way, we have a sense that living being can be trees, rocks, sky, moon, Earth's atmosphere, maybe cars, planes, missiles, bombs. How can we find a boundary to this very moment of being? Here's two more dialogues that either further clarify or do not. So this is Dao Wu. I won't tell you about Dao Wu except that he's 10th. So he's a contemporary of Zhao Zhao. So Dao Wu asks, who is it who has attained the essential principle of Hui Neng? Shurto says, the person who has comprehended the Buddha Dharma. The person who has comprehended the Buddha Dharma. Dao Wu says, has the master attained it? Shurto says, I haven't attained it. Dao Wu says, why haven't you attained it? Shurto, because I can't comprehend the Buddha Dharma. And here's another one. A monk asks Shurto, why did the first ancestor come from the West? So he's speaking about Bodhidharma. Why did the first ancestor come from the West? Shurto said, ask the temple pillar. The monk said, I don't understand. Shurto said, I don't understand either. So these dialogues, a little bit of a comedy routine, resonate with the previous conversation in which Shurto's teacher, Xingsa, says, I don't even practice the Four Noble Truths. Comprehending Buddha Dharma cannot be attained by I. The sense of I, a separate I who acquires knowledge and attainment, disappears in the comprehension of Buddha Dharma. The comprehension of Buddha Dharma is warm, hand to warm hand. Me, myself, and I disappear, not needed, and reappear when it's time to make lunch. The sense of I is a fabrication of mind. It is useful, even a necessary fabrication, which we should not disrespect or diminish. A sense of order, past and future, predictability is important in our lives. If I go into my kitchen to make a pot of soup, I want the pot to be where it belongs. I don't want to spend 10 minutes looking for the pot. I want to find the breadboard, the knife, the garlic press, and so on, where they belong. I want to find the onions, the garlic, the carrots, the celery, the herbs and spices, where they belong. I spoke the other day about how we say we bring practice to our work. And I suggested that we flip that around. How do we bring work to our practice? Because our work should not be diminished. Our work should not be disrespected. We should not think the relative is lesser than the absolute or lesser than merging. This teaching of the Sandokai is about the merging, the identity of relative and absolute. This merging is not a steady state. There is no steady state. Through our work, we can open up wide in this moment. So if my soup pot is somewhere unusual, sometimes I can be open to that. Let go of annoyance and move along to the next adventure in my soup preparations. In washing the pot, I can disappear into the beauty of soapy water. That the sense of I is a fabrication was illustrated to me the other night as I was falling asleep. Sentences of my narrative started coming apart, falling into fragments of sentences. She walks up into the apple tree, getting done. Do I love you, my oh my? A stone's throw. Swim along. Mind is a storyteller. We have evolved a mind which is an incessant storyteller, like a kaleidoscope, making ever-changing patterns from random, disparate elements. Another night, I actually got up and wrote down my best recollection of one of these kaleidoscopic constructions. Here's what I wrote. When I was 6, he gave me miso with tempeh, and I gave it to my mother, who rewarded me with a lipstick and said, "You are perfect just the way you are, but still you could use a little improvement." This sentence sounds like it makes sense, but it doesn't. The references span many decades. Our language and expression of mind is like a kaleidoscope that can integrate disparate elements so that they appear to make sense. But I do love the thought of my mother speaking the words of Suzuki Roshi. You are perfect just the way you are, but still you could use a little improvement. Have a lipstick. Norman wrote a book of poetry many years ago called On Whether or Not to Believe in the Mind. A very good question. we act on our kaleidoscopic thoughts, products of mind, with deep belief in their truth. It makes the world so dangerous. But after all, that's all we've got. And it's miraculous that it works as well as it does to get things done, to get the soup made and on the table and the dishes washed. The miracle of all that, the miracle of all that mind does for us should not be diminished, should not be disrespected. Our practice is to see mind as it is, to bring mind to our practice, and the work of mind and body to our practice. We're not here to whip mind and body into the shape of practice. Mind and body is our offering to practice. Practice and enlightenment should not be the bullies here. When we make practice and enlightenment the bullies, we might not notice the ordinary moments, the humdrum moments, the yucky moments of life, which are in and of themselves extraordinary. I'd like to read a passage from Suzuki Roshi's talk entitled Warm Hand to Warm Hand. Here he's speaking about our bodhisattva work in relation to others. He says, if someone is very good, we can share the joy of practice with them by giving them a good cushion, a good zendo, something like that. But a zendo doesn't mean anything to someone who is suffering too much. Whatever you give may not be accepted. Someone may say, I don't need it. I'm suffering too much. I don't know why. Right now, to get out of the suffering is the most important thing to me. You can't help me. Nothing can help me. When you hear this, you should be like Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. You should become like the one who is suffering, and you should suffer as that person suffers because of your innate love, your instinctive love. You share the suffering. That is love in its true sense. This is a scary practice. Not being bullied by our commitment to helping or our idea of what help and goodness is supposed to look like. Just responding, warm hand to warm hand. In the Sandokai, we see a number of paired words and images. West to east, sharp or dull, northern or southern ancestors, light and dark, spiritual source and branching streams, interact and do not. This is a presentation of the nature of relationships, not one, not two. Shimmering dynamism of relationship. We can't really say much about objects without implying their relationships with other objects, space, energy, etc. We can't favor one over another because they are interdependent. Light and dark oppose one another like front and back foot walking. The opposition of weight, balance, and momentum is what walking is. Shohaku Okumura likens this to the 5 fingers of your hand. Each finger is separate and yet not separate. Each finger is a part of the hand, and each finger has its own capacity. The little finger cannot do what the index finger can do. Yet it would be absurd to try to figure out which is more important, higher ranking, more worthy of our practice. That makes no sense. These pairings refer to value judgments inherent in teachings of other schools of Tang Dynasty Chan. Most of these other schools have faded into history. But today we still have our deep value judgments about things, people, groups of people, and so on. These judgments make our world dangerous. The Sandokai is rich with teaching. And for now, I would like to leave us with this one point, that things exist in relationship, interrelationship, and independently. Shohaku Okumura speaks of his wife. I'll speak of my husband, making the point that even though I know and love my husband, having been married for 47 years, still, if he has a toothache, I cannot feel his pain. He and I will each die alone, even if one of the other of us is present. Each of us bears responsibility for our actions. Those of us who have taken Buddhist vows are responsible for understanding to the best of our ability and for carrying the teachings forth according to our particular circumstances. Yet we walk forward in this together, sharing, merging, enriching each other's lives and practice depending on each other. And we bear responsibility for the world we wake up to each morning. To rejoice with the joyous and grieve with the grieving, and to see what is needed that I can find a way to give. Again, our hearts are breaking with the violence and suffering of people, animals, plants, and the whole earth. The whole earth is bearing this today. In that spirit, I would like to end my talk by reading Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, "Please Call Me by My True Names." Please call me by my true names. Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today, I'm still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I am arriving. To be a bud on a spring branch. To be a tiny bird with still fragile wings. Learning to sing on the surface of the river. I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond. And I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks. And I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands. And I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the 4 oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and my laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up, and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Timeless poem by Thich Nhat Hanh. Thank you very much.